The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, part 2 of our always long and meaty conversation with Chuck Klosterman. Chuck, are you ready for part 2?
I'm prepared.
Like in the NCAA, it's almost like a rudderless ghost ship. I don't know. I don't trust anybody involved. I don't feel like there's any rhyme or reason to what they do. Goodell's gone the other way. He's, clearly terrified of how much money they're going to have to shell out in concussion lawsuits, and he's been proactively the last 2 years kind of shifting the league's stance on hard hits and all this stuff, and now he's gone over the top with this bounty thing, to say the least. I mean, it's almost like he's given himself some strange autonomy that I don't even feel like David Stern ever gave himself. Like at David Stern's height of however his inflated self-worth, I don't even think he would have done what Goodell's doing with this New Orleans story.
Well, yeah,
Are you following
probably,
this?
Maybe the only correlator is like Mountain Landis or something,
Yeah.
And
it's like, who are you?
But that was during a period where baseball was by far the dominant sport. And
Yep.
they had the most to lose by any sort of change or evolution of the game. And Roger Goodell is in the same position. He is overlooking a sport that is not just the most popular sport. To be quite honest, as far as I can tell, in America, it's as popular as every other sport combined. It might even be more popular. I feel like that its meaning in people's lives and the amount that it dominates the conversation and the amount that people are involved, pro football sort of usurps everything. And yet, they're on the precipice of this situation that could destroy everything. So
Yep.
He's really motivated to stop any kind of change. That he needs to be as conservative as possible and sort of as kind of iron-fisted as possible.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be the commissioner of the NFL when it collapses. And someday it will, but not for a while.
He's given himself almost a level of omnipotence that I can't remember a commissioner having in my lifetime. I know, as you said, Landis had it way back then when, but
David Stern, now, I got to say, I loved him during the NBA draft. He's actually become an incredibly charming jerk now.
He's owned it. I wrote about that in my draft diary, and I noticed. I got to be honest. I noticed it at the finals. I felt like he had his swagger back, and I think that the unwritten story of that lockout was how much of a physical toll it took on some of the people involved. Not just Stern, who's in his 70s or late 60s, but the Peter Holt, the San Antonio owner, Glenn Taylor, the Minnesota owner, even Derek Fisher. Derek Fisher was out of shape for 4 months. These guys were up until 3 a.m, night after night during that one stretch, and I think it took away. I really think that's why Stern messed up that the Chris Paul veto. I just feel like he wasn't in the right frame of mind, and he handled it poorly. But it was interesting seeing him not just at the finals, but at that draft. His chest was puffed out. He had good ratings again.
Well, to me, this probably could be a long conversation, but I really feel something changed with him during the situation when it was the Spurs and the Suns in the playoffs, and they suspended Duncan for stepping off. I think it was Duncan, right? Or was it Boris Diaw? Or am I getting this backwards?
No, it was Amari Stoudemire
and
it was
Amari
Boris
Stoudemire.
Diaw.
And he went on PTI, and Kornheiser, who usually kind of treats that show just like a goof, he kind of went at him and basically said, everyone knows that this is a misuse of this rule. You're misappropriating this rule, And Stern's take was like, well, I can't change it. It's the rule. And Kornheiser was, but you're the commissioner. You could. Like, judges overturn laws sometimes. You can make exceptions. And I felt like this look on Stern's face was the beginning of a person who's like, I don't listen to anyone. I don't listen to anybody.
Right.
I'm just going to make this decision. And I feel like he went, and that's when, the perception of him started to change from being, at one point, it was like, he's either the greatest commissioner of all time, or he's the second to Rozelle or whatever. And now I don't feel like that is much of a conversation. I clearly feel now Rozelle was a better commissioner for the NFL than Stern was for the NBA. But Stern, who now is, in my mind, a total jerk, is likable again, because it almost seems like he almost has a better understanding of how fictional all this stuff is and how constructed and unreal sports are. And he's just going to be this person inside of it who sort of gets to change the way people feel about something, and he thinks it's really funny.
It's almost, he's embraced the pro wrestlingness of sports, it feels like. Like, there's definitely, the comparisons were made a million times, but there's definitely a little Vince McMahon in his demeanor now. And he has to be the first commissioner ever who cupped his ears for booze during a draft. I mean, there's no way that's ever happened before. But yeah, I'm with you. It's funny. I actually think he was mad at me for a while because I really went after him at the Chris Paul, all that stuff. Like, I was basically writing the guy's got old and he should quit, which I believed at the time. And then I got the sense from him running into him a couple of times at the finals that he not only did he have his swagger back, but he was in our limited interactions kind of this thing like, I'm still here, Simmons. The old guy's not going anywhere. I'm still running the league.
I don't know David Stern, but I guarantee you, regardless of how he feels about you as a person, he loves you. The fact that you have moved the NBA back to the forefront of these discussions, the fact that you can write a book about the history of his game that's 900 pages long and it goes to number one on the bestsellers list, I'm sure he perceives you as one more thing in his life that leads to his success. That the highest profile
I don't know
sports
about that.
favorite. Oh, I guarantee it. I guarantee that he sees you as a great ambassador toward the popularity of pro basketball. I mean, it is. I was talking about this with. I just talk about a lot. Talking about sports in general. I have to admit now, it's something. One thing that has changed in my lifetime is that pro basketball is bigger than college basketball. There's no question about it.
Oh, you've admitted defeat.
Well, I mean, in terms of what's bigger, what kind of defeat is that? I don't care. I'm not. But what I'm saying is that, it doesn't change my personal interest. But maybe to a degree it does, because it's clear now to me that people care about pro basketball more than college basketball. That didn't seem possible when I started following the sport in 1979. It just did not. It always seemed,
The amazing thing to me is Oklahoma City and the fact that it's basically the Packers for basketball. They're a big market team now, but yet they're playing in the 56 TV market, and it doesn't matter. And not only that, they're probably the big, if you look at jersey sales and the impact of teams on kids who are 12 and under, that's the team everybody's picking. Mm-hmm. You go to arenas and you see, especially you go to a Clipper game and Oklahoma City's in town, you'll see these 10-year-olds wearing a Durant jersey or a Westbrook jersey.
Well, they have three very talented, extremely cool guys. But
young guys,
part of
too.
the reason this has happened, though, I think, it's because I know when you say you're admitting defeat, what you think I'm saying is that the college game has sort of started to lag and the pro game has gotten better. I don't know. We could have a long discussion about that.
Well, that is true, though. It's 100% true.
The main thing that has happened, though, is in every tier of society, entertainment, sports, politics, everything, there's a greater emphasis on celebrity. And you can't really be a collegiate celebrity the way you can be a professional celebrity. You can't be a collegiate star the way you can be an NBA star, because an NBA star can mean things that have nothing to do with basketball. And that's what drives everything now. Everything is driven sort of by people's sense of relationship with what they are watching. That, do I feel like I know this person? Do I know what this person is like outside of what I'm watching? In other words, it's not, when I was a kid, I cared about how they played, and that was about all, and the people I really liked maybe I read books about or I read about read in Sports Illustrated. For the most part, my relationship with, say, Jack Sikma was what I saw on the court, and that's not the case now. Now it's everything outside of that combined with who they are as a player, and that, I think for people under the age of 25 particularly, like, if they listen to this podcast, what they think I'm saying will sound ridiculous to them because they won't even recognize how ingrained those things are.
Well, you're talking about brand cultivation. I thought Anthony Davis is an interesting test case. Somebody that he spends 1 year in college. He owns the unibrow thing. Gives this interview right before he gets picked, and he's talking about how he trademarked it. He's like, I don't even think he's 20 yet. He's already slowly figuring out how to maneuver himself into this world and become not just somebody that helps you win a basketball game, but somebody that kind of stands out when nobody's playing.
Oh, but it's just, even Anthony Davis is a great example, Bill, because I never felt like I had a conversation about him that didn't begin, or at least involve, discussion as potential as a pro. Because, when these guys come in as freshmen, yeah, you watch the McDonald's All-Star Game and all that stuff. I follow that, but you never really know. I mean, Harrison Barnes is not the player that I thought he was going to be judging from high school, but I wasn't that shocked by it because it doesn't always happen. So Anthony Davis is somebody who, I don't know how much awareness of him I had, but probably 15 games into the season, you would hear, like Billis say, like, he's going to be unstoppable pro. Just like he's just made for the pro game. And because he was at Kentucky, whose only purpose is basically to prepare guys for the NBA, he was a pro in college. Like, he never seemed like a college player. There was never a sense that he was going. That nobody thought he was ever going to play more than 1 year at Kentucky once they realized who he was.
Yep. So
he was a pro immediately. So it's almost as though he was just interning.
Well, that's what I like about Kentucky, and that, and it seems like people are down on Kentucky, and there's more Kentucky haters than likers. It seems to me that Calipari is the first guy who's kind of owned the way college basketball is now, and has figured out how to turn that school into basically a 1 or 2 year factory for these guys that will better prepare them short term to compete at a high level and maybe win a title, but then long term to go right into the league with skills you need.
Well, sure, but I can
to succeed.
To explain why people don't like that. What you just said is that Calipari seems to be the most suited for being a coach in how college basketball is now. And that's true, but I don't like the way college basketball is now.
I know, but it is what it is.
I don't like the fact that he's doing it, and the fact that he's succeeding at it doesn't make me like him more, it makes me like him less. Because he's going to put other programs in a position where if they want to compete with him, they sort of have to use the same ideology, and then the whole thing is wrecked.
But the whole thing already is wrecked, though. He's just the first one who's admitted it. I feel like he's Marlowe in The Wire.
But
he's Marlowe Stanfield.
It wasn't too long ago that Butler was almost winning the national championship. That was a really exciting thing for people who like college basketball. That it was close to sort of the construction of the sport.
Wait a second though. Those days aren't over. I still think
that's what I mean. It wasn't that long ago. So I don't know if everything is wrecked now. I don't agree with you, but the fact of the matter is, particularly if Kentucky comes back next year and they win the national title, if you coach at North Carolina or you coach at UCLA or wherever, and you need to be an elite program, your program is not a success if it's not a championship caliber program. They're going to have to do the same thing. And then it's going to be 8 programs, but it's just going to be 8 teams. And everybody else is going to play for the right to get hammered by them in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, but that could have happened a couple years ago with Butler, and it didn't.
I know, because
it's all going to depend on.
I wrote about this. The thing it was Calipari in the past was there was this sort of, well, as it turns out, false belief that if you try to do it the way he's doing it, in some ways, which this might be arguable, taking shortcuts in a way, not cheating necessarily, but like taking shortcuts to this, there was going to be some kind of inherent flaws. Like Memphis plays Kansas in the national title, and Memphis can't make free throws. They're the better team. They can't make free throws. They're too young. They're choking under the pressure. And it's like happens. It's like, that's what a sort of reactionary person like me wants to think, wants to make themselves believe that there is some value in sort of the way things used to be. But now there's not. He's proven it's not. And if he wins it again next year, it's going to really prove that. There's just going to be no way to get around it. And then it's going to be a different game. And pretty soon it's like college basketball won't matter at all. And I hate that.
You know what you're basically describing? Soap operas.
How so?
Remember soap operas were really big when we were growing up.
Oh, yeah.
Soap operas were also a feeder system to Hollywood. People came in, they appeared on a soap opera, they made their bones, then they were plucked and pulled into Hollywood, and they started doing TV shows and movies, and there are countless examples of that.
Well, there's also two other bigger things, though, Bill.
What?
One, there used to be a lot of women at home during the day. And that's pretty rare now.
That's a good
people
point.
like my mom were home during the day taking care of kids, and the television was going to be on, and here's
there were less channels.
There was nothing else on.
You didn't let me
Game
finish.
shows used to be this way.
But you didn't let me finish, though.
What?
I never got to finish my point.
Okay, what's the next point?
Well, so soap operas when we were growing up were one way, and then it changed for reasons that probably soap operas didn't like. As you said, less women at home. We had more channels. All of a sudden, everybody's got 500 channels. You don't have 11. You don't need to watch Luke and Laura on General Hospital. I would say it changed for college basketball in the same way. Once guys realized that they didn't need to spend 4 years in college or 3 years or whatever, and that they could just leave after one and go to the NBA and start making money right away, that was it. That was the equivalent of the 500 channels. So I think the college basketball that we grew up watching will never come back unless they can figure out, unless the NBA can figure out some way to have some sort of feeder system or to fund some of the college programs, or I don't know. I mean, I know they're trying to figure out, and there's just no way to do it. But on the other hand, you can't tell me Anthony Davis shouldn't be in the NBA next year. He should be. All the guys that came in as freshmen, I think Kid Gilchrist is going to be good. I think a lot of these guys are going to be good right away. And it's just, I think they're a lot more mature now.
And when you say that there's no reason he shouldn't be in the NBA, are you saying that because you're saying it's unfair to him, or that because you love pro game, you would like to see the best players involved with it?
Yeah,
I would. Would it have been unfair if let's say college basketball had the same rule that college football has? So you have to be out of high school, I think, 3 years?
Right. Okay.
Now, if that rule existed in college basketball, would that be unfair to you? Would that be unconstitutional?
Yes. I agree. Steve Kerr argued the other way on Grantland. I just think if you're ready, you're ready. And more times than not, these guys are ready. I also think in football you can make a case when you look at the short lifespan of running backs now, and the fact that these guys have 7 or 8 year careers and it's over, and you could argue that they're wasting 2 of those years in college not getting paid, where they're taking 12 games of hits. Maybe that. What's the point of having that rule in football? Yeah, I guess they could say the guys aren't fully physically developed, but they aren't in basketball either.
Well, but okay, I mean, I got to say that's a good argument. I mean, that is true, especially for running backs, because it doesn't even seem like age is the number as much as the number of carries.
It's just carries. However, you have a limit. You have a shelf life of 5,000 carries or 4,000, whatever it is, and that's it. You're done.
However, and I don't know who I'm supporting when I make this argument. I don't know if I'm supporting some kind of weird institutional, I don't know, but what that does, though, is it does create college football, which is the best sport we have. It's the most entertaining, it's the best thing we have in sports. And part of the reason that is because, you have these junior running backs who, yes, are better than, half the dudes in the NFL, but we're still watching them play. And there's just all these things around the game that seem so much more valuable to me than the pros, even though that there is a cost, and the cost is the amount of money these guys can make. Although I suppose if we're going to keep going with this argument, I mean, how many pro athletes go bankrupt late in life? An extremely high number, and more than the number of people who win the lottery. And do you think that this is not somewhat a product of the amount of money they receive at an age before they're ready to sort of think about what that means? I mean, I think that if you're really going to look at are we trying to benefit the athlete? In a weird way, it might be to their greater long-term benefit if they had to graduate. If you had to go to school 4 years or whatever. I mean, I know you can't. I wouldn't want that rule imposed because that's unfair in some ways, but in a lot of ways. But I do wonder if the idea that you need to let a guy who's 19 make a lot of money because he has the ability to, is it really to his long-term benefit?
Well, that's the Steve Kerr argument. You're arguing that the experiences you have in college and the way you mature as a human being and the relationships you make positively affect every choice you make after that. Now, let's say Durant stays all 4 years in college. So instead of the 2000 draft, he's in the 2010 draft. He would have just finished the second year of his career. He would have 2 years left on his rookie deal before he could even get paid. I'm going to guess if you gave Durant the choice of whether if he had to do it over again, he would stay all 4 years. There's a 0% chance he would do that differently.
Yeah, I would be shocked if he would say I regret.
So that's why,
in fact, more often I remember being surprised by I remember Mike Dunleavy saying that I should have went out a year earlier. He's I would have been better served sitting on the bench practicing against these guys than playing another year at Duke, and that was
Jared Sullinger.
Yeah.
Jared Sullinger is another example. All right, so let's say this. Let's say your writing career is over at age 30. It ends. That's it. You can't write anymore. So you could have started writing professionally as a sophomore or junior and getting paid. You wouldn't have been that good yet. You wouldn't have really started to reach your potential until you're 23. And if you started your career after your freshman year, it would have hurt your writing by about 15%, but you would have made more money. What would you have done?
Well, okay, but this is an interesting scenario you're creating because there's one really key difference in here, which is that this indicates that the only way I can make money is through writing. That I need to make as much as I can during this window of time. But that's the way we look at these athletes now.
I think that's the way they look at themselves. They look at themselves that way a lot of times.
So let's say in the scenario you create for me, I can't start making money as a writer until I'm out of college, but I get a business degree, and I have an understanding of how business works. My writing career ends when I'm 30. Is it not then possible that I could start kind of a second act in my life? The thing is, we look at Anthony Davis, and we don't even consider the idea of him having any second act to his life besides either being an analyst or a coach. Nobody thinks to themselves, it's like if Anthony Davis stayed 4 years at Kentucky, he could, become an architect or something. It just seems crazy even to say it.
Yeah. You know what's interesting at the ESPYs? They gave this career achievement, the Arthur Ashe, whatever that award's called, the Arthur Ashe Award to Pat Summitt. They had this little stat in there that was slipped in that every single player she's ever coached graduated. I thought that was incredible. I thought that was one of the 5 greatest stats I've ever heard in my life. Every single player should have one player that didn't graduate.
Well, I mean, there's no pressure on those on female athletes to go to the WNBA the way there is in the NBA, and there wasn't.
I mean, not one drops out. Not one just says, I can't handle this political science class I'm taking. I'm just dropping out. Or not one person got pregnant, or not one person developed a drug problem and just couldn't finish. Not one person died, just randomly. I thought that was amazing. It
is amazing. I can't.
The law of averages, that one weird thing didn't happen in 40 years. It made me wonder if she was the greatest coach of all time.
She might be
in college.
It's really possible. I think I think that you could make a very strong argument that she is the greatest coach of the 20th century.
Wait, last thing. We're taping this on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, I thought you had some surprises for me. I'm wondering what these surprises.
Well, now we're at the hour 15 mark. I mean, we're.
Well, it's going to be 2 parts anyway.
Yeah, probably is going to be 2 parts.
I have some things I'd like to ask you about too.
We got to wrap up at some point, but
okay.
News we could do another time. News broke. Jeremy Lin is a Houston Rocket.
Not surprising.
Not surprising. So now you have all these Knicks fans who are just, 100% outraged. The Linsanity thing was one of the few times in the last 12 years that they actually enjoyed being a Knicks fan. I've had people who went to a couple of the Lin games, specifically the Friday night game against the Lakers, and just said that was one of the great sporting events of their entire life. These people are outraged that he's not going to be back. You are a not sports atheist. What did we decide? Sports agnostic. Can the Knicks fans, you wrote about this yesterday, what was your argument for the Knicks fans being able to switch to Brooklyn and not feeling guilty about it?
Well, I mean, I always think that at the pro level, that's always an option. I mean, to me, it's like when you're interested in pro sports, you're interested in the present tense. You know, there's a natural inclination against that. I mentioned this in the thing. You know, it's like there are some teams that I always root for unconsciously, and I feel kind of dumb about it because what I realize what I'm rooting for is totally based, like, not only, like, you know, not rationally, but like on like the stupidest extension of emotion. It's like I used to like something and I still want to like it. If you're a Knicks fan, you know, and you love Jeremy Lin, I mean, it was great. It was really exciting when that was happening. That was the most seriously I think I watched the Knicks the entire time I've been in New York was during this period when he was sort of just exploding. But I don't know. You're more into like the financial side of the NBA. From what I came to understand, like it wasn't worth it. What the amount it was going to cost them did not reflect his actual value. And you know, you kind of went through this on Twitter, I know, with like Ray Allen and Garnett and stuff like this, and whether or not you should, you know, if your fans, should you factor in how fans feel about people when you're making decisions? Like you can cut a guy or you can keep a guy, you know, and it's kind of like a flip of the coin. Do you factor in how beloved they are and stuff? And I guess my natural inclination is to say no. I mean, it's just you can't factor that in because fans are fickle. And the fact
it's not a great idea.
If Jeremy Lin started playing awful, all these outraged people would be outraged at Lin. I mean, just sports fans aren't rational people, so you can't look at their response as any way to dictate how you make business decisions.
It's usually not a good idea. I would say in this case, if it was a Dore versus Dore B situation, and Dore was, we're going to go with Jason Kidd, who really was washed up 2 years ago, except for he had a little resurgence in the playoffs.
I don't understand that move. That seemed weird to me.
And Ray Felton, who was legitimately overweight last season and was a cancer in Portland, and go on the Portland fans' message boards and see what they think of Ray Felton. Like probably the most unpopular Blazer of the past 12 years. So when you're saying, no, we can't afford Jeremy Lin, but we're going to give $8 million a year to Raymond Felton and Jason Kidd. That's, I think, when you're opening the door for trouble. The other thing is, so it would be like 5 years, or $5 million, then $15 million in the third year. It seems like a lot. The luxury tax, it basically doubles, so that would mean he would cost $30 million in the third year. But from everything I understand about how this works with how this worked with Yao once upon a time overseas and what Lin's potential is as an earner for the team, it does seem like they would make a lot, if not all, of that money back. So that's the part I don't get. And then on top of it, in that third year, he'd be making $50 million as an expiring contract. That's actually a pretty good trade asset for them.
Yeah, I know. You know, maybe you make the money back. I mean, from a pure nickels and dimes side, maybe you do. That's not, you know. But the fact of the matter is, like, if you're running a team, the main thing that's going to create revenue over time is success. And
true.
You have success by having the money to get other good players. And honestly, is Lin really a very good complementary player to Anthony? I really don't feel like he is. I feel like they both need the ball a lot. I know that they have no sort of beef. They have a good relationship. But, like, Lin kind of, for a point guard, he's kind of a black hole at times. I mean, I love watching him play, but he's sort of a one-handed guy who likes to go to the basket and create his own shot. And Anthony is, throw me the ball and let me stand here for force. You know, it's like he is the farthest reach of that kind of player. So it wasn't having those guys in the court together. It's like they have more good guys on the floor, but that wasn't going to make them a team who was going to compete with Miami or Chicago.
Well, I think that's the crux of the issue for Knicks fans is that this team has catered so much around Carmelo, both, you know, all the assets they gave up for him originally, and now you're saying, you know, it does seem like maybe one of the reasons that they let Lynn go is that in the limited sample size with Carmelo, it wasn't great. So,
I mean, if you said like, okay, 9 months from now or whatever the future is, you're like, it's late in the NBA season, and the Knicks are great. The Knicks are contending for a title. My belief would be that the only way I can see that happening is Carmelo's averaging 35 points a game. I mean, to me, if he's on your team and you want to succeed, he's the kind of guy who, if he's not scoring a ton, he's hurting you. Like, if he gets 18 points, he's not doing enough other things to make, he's got to be playing great, and he's got to be taking lots of shots and sort of going on these rips where he scores 12 in a row or whatever. If he's not doing that, get rid of him and get a bunch of different guys. So to me, it's like if you're going to build the team with him as the cornerstone, you pretty much have to decide that everybody else on the floor is going to be secondary to him getting shots.
Yeah, that's logical. I also think Carmelo, I'm one of the last Carmelo defenders. I still think you could win the title if he was your best guy.
I think you can too, but he's got to be your best guy, and he's got to be the guy. I mean, everybody else is sort of has to be that because when Lynn's playing good, he's sort of the same way. You kind of want him to take every shot. I mean, that game against the Lakers, for example, it was just like everything sort of revolved around him, and D'Antoni played a style that was really catered to that. To me, I think that you could win a title with Carmelo Anthony and a bunch of complementary players, but all those complementary guys would be shoot second players. It would be a dominant rebounder, a bunch of great defenders, and a point guard who just sort of understands, the windows when it needs to be somebody else shooting besides Anthony. But he's got to be taking the lion's share of everything.
But here's the part you're missing with Lynn. He really, on a great team, could end up being like the irrational confidence Jason Terry
totally.
guy.
Yes.
The sixth man off the bench, instant offense, can get hot, will take any shot, has no fear. That might be his destiny. Now, his destiny might be better than that. He might be an above average, maybe top 15 starting point guard. We're about to find out in Houston. But worst case scenario, I do feel like he was a Jason Terry type, and I think in that limited sample size of 25 games, I really did feel like, all right, this guy is an NBA player. This guy can be one of the 7 best guys on a championship team. So when you're looking at it that way, the Knicks just let him go for nothing. And they're a team that really didn't have a lot of assets to begin with. They just lost Fields, who I never liked, but at least you could argue that he was a possible asset.
I might even be more in on him than you. I would say that he could be the 3rd or 4th best guy on the championship team.
On Lynn. Yeah, he could get to 4. Yeah, he could get to number 4, Jeremy Lin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's probably unrealistic to assume to him to play always at that level. But if he played close to that level, I just think he gave teams a lot of interesting problems, and maybe they're the kind of problems you'd figure out over time. But
yeah, I don't agree with the Knicks' decision, and I do feel like
you would have kept.
I mean, look at what happened to their stock yesterday. There has to be some correlation, right? The MSG stock went way down yesterday. That couldn't have been a coincidence. I don't think. But I would have kept him and worst case scenario, he was an expiring contract that 3rd year that you could have tried to get rid of to get whoever and, one more big chess piece. And, I think the Knicks were in a situation with their fans where there's just been so much blood spilled that, this is not going to help.
People in New York are hard to please. Like I say, if Lynn starts playing bad, they would have buried him. They would have. It just there's no. I think that almost of all the markets, that in some ways New York, Philadelphia maybe too, are the most difficult in the sense that there's just no room for forgiveness. It's not part of the vocabulary. So I don't. All these people upset about Lynn going and it's like as if they've sort of been betrayed. Like they would have eventually turned on him. I know they would have. Unless he would have a sterling 12-year career or whatever,
What are you most excited about for an NBA team in Brooklyn? What's the number one thing you're looking forward to with this?
It would be interesting if it actually somehow something Brooklyn-like actually became part of the team. Like if there was the sense somehow the way that the Jets and the Mets are compared to the Yankees and the Giants, that somehow, but I don't sense like that's gonna happen. I like the color scheme they've picked. I like the fact that they're trying to be competitive right away. My neighbor was talking to me about this. He was sort of like, well, that the fact of the matter is, it's like, particularly if they were somehow to get Dwight Howard, which is not going to happen, but if they would, there would be an immediate sense that this team could compete with people. Now, it's kind of odd because usually when you're an expansion team, you assume the first year will be successful just because they're there. But Brooklyn's not like that. If they're not competitive, people will give up on them, after the All-Star break. So there is some pressure for them to be good. I don't know. What do you think? What are you excited about?
I like having two New York teams. I think it's going to be fun. I do think it's going to be really hard for them to sway the Knicks fans. I'm sure today helped with Lynn, but I don't know whether it's an under 40 thing, but it does seem like Brooklyn has become kind of the epicenter of the internet.
Yes.
And it's interesting to just throw an NBA team in that epicenter. It seems like 70% of all bloggers and columnists and anybody under the age of 35 live in Brooklyn within the same 3 blocks of each other. So just randomly throwing Darren Williams and Joe Johnson and Brooke Lopez and Chris Humphries, all these people into that epicenter. I'm kind of interested to see how it goes. I almost feel like they're going to be the most over-dissected, overwritten about NBA team. Like, I thought Miami was, but at least like Miami had LeBron, who's the best player in 20 years. The amount of words that will be spilled about this team compared to the actual product is probably the biggest disparity we will have seen. Don't you think?
Well, although what's going to somewhat detract attention.
What?
Tebow with the Jets.
True.
Tebow with especially if there's any if the Jets are really succeeding and he's a contributor as sort of the wildcat back, or if the Jets are struggling, and especially if if the Jets are winning but Sanchez is playing poorly, that's going to be such a monolithic media discussion in New York. It's going to actually make people forget the Nets are even in Brooklyn.
Well, I would say this would be the greatest 4-month stretch ever to host a sports radio show in New York.
Well, it's gonna, that really,
because you even mentioned the Giants, who might go back to back here, and they're bringing just about everybody back, and then you have the Knicks and that whole soap opera, and then you have the Yankees are going to be in the playoffs, and you have the Rangers are good again. It's pretty interesting.
Well, because let's say the Giants win the Super Bowl again in one of the next 3 years, this period of Giants football is going to be so strange. Like, you'll have to put them sort of in the category of one of the greatest stretches, in the modern era of the NFL, and yet they never seem like the best team in the NFC East.
No.
Ever. I don't ever remember them going into the year and me thinking, like, this is the best team in the NFC. They somehow seem like the third best team going into this year, which is nuts. But they are probably the best team, but it never feels that way.
Yeah. And it never feels like Eli is the best quarterback.
No.
Even though, his big games are adding up. It's weird, though. I'm not quite ready to shift into the NFL mode yet. It's almost like the basketball has been so draining from early December on. It's like never ended.
I'm just sort of, I've always associated myself or identified myself as being sort of a basketball fan first. The basketball is always my favorite sport. It was the sport I love to play the most. It was but I would be lying if I said anything beyond the fact that I'm already thinking about football more than the other games now.
Yeah.
It's so prevalent. Hey, before you get going though, I want to be on the record with a prediction that I think that I want to be the first person to predict this. It came to me in a dream. Usain Bolt is going to lose the 100 at the Olympics.
Usain Bolt's going to lose the 100.
He's going to get the silver. Someone's going to beat him. This came to me in a dream.
It's an epiphany. Okay. Well, we'll replay this. I was going to ask you about the Olympics because right as this basketball stuff settles down, all of a sudden we have the Olympics. For whatever reason, this has turned into one of the most action-packed sports years. I guess the reason is the fact that the NBA lockout pushed everything back a few weeks.
Well, plus we can have a 2-hour conversation where we don't talk about any games. That's the difference now. That is the biggest difference in all sports, the biggest change in my lifetime is the amount of time that I talk about sports now that don't involve games. That used to be all it was.
Or things that just happened.
Now it's 10%.
Yeah, like it would be weird if I was like, hey, how about this Bryce Harper Ozzie Guillen thing last night? Wow.
Yeah, it never happens. You know, and it's not just this conversation. It seems to be all conversations. Look at Grantland. We should do a study on Grantland and see how much of the content on there is about games or matches and how much is about the peripheral world of sport. I would just be fascinated by that. See what
the big picture
world,
are. Yeah. Well, we have ESPN.com for the games.
But even look at the front page of ESPN.com. I was just looking at today. It was like the Des Bryant thing that I brought up. It was about Lynn.
We never went back to Des Bryant.
But it was everything except sports.
Well,
it was just, that's just how it is now.
But where does the Olympics fit into this then?
Well, the way the Olympics are broadcast, they need the events, obviously, as the centerpiece, but we're going to, you know this is going to happen, we're going to get hours of television and pages of words about the human interest stories around them, because the thing about the Olympics is, like everything else, as I mentioned before, people have really realized celebrity is what matters in America. So if you can turn these people into celebrities, it doesn't matter if they're dancers, it doesn't matter if they're, if they're press secretaries, it doesn't matter if they're, decathletes. If you can turn them into somebody that someone can imagine being on the upper corner of Us Weekly or something, then that's all it takes. It doesn't matter what they do.
How did they do that with Michael Phelps, who by all accounts has no personality?
Well, but he, I mean that they did it last time though. They'll do it again.
I know. I'm asking you, how did they do it?
There'll probably be some. Or maybe if we talk about it, it won't happen. There'll probably be some terrible story about how he talks about the mistake he made by smoking marijuana, and it'll just how he lost his way or whatever. I'm sure there'll be that. There'll probably be something like, I don't know. Does he date anybody? I don't even know.
I think he dates around.
Oh, see, that can kind of be a story.
He's kind of a modern-day Joe DiMaggio. Well, what is Chuck Klosterman, sports fan, most excited about? In order.
In the Olympics?
Yeah, because for me it's like USA basketball #1, just because I'm an insane basketball fan.
I gotta. This is a terrible thing to say. People are gonna hate me for saying this, but man, I so wish Rubio was playing for Spain.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. I think it would be much more fun if he was playing.
That there would be a potential for Spain to beat the U.S. if that happens, because they have so much more to play for.
Right.
And I don't know. Is Griffin's out now for the Olympics, right?
Griffin's out. Dwight Howard's out. Derrick Rose is out. Like, there's
some weeknesses there.
It's a mild door. Yeah. They're a little small.
Track is #2. I mean, I'm crazy about both. This decathlete, I can't remember his name now. This young guy who shared
the American
trials. I'm into that. I used to really like Olympic boxing. I don't even know what's going on with Olympic boxing.
I don't either.
Like, how did that disappear? I mean, we all know that boxing became corrupt, but why is Olympic boxing not?
I think the Roy Jones thing just murdered it. The Roy Jones thing was like it was such a hijacking. It was just Olympic boxing was never the same after that. It was such like a fix. It was such a fix. But I would say I really like track and field. I've never been a swimming guy. It got easy to get
terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
It was easy to get caught up in it last year because of Phelps, but for the most part, it's just like watching paint dry for me. But
it's not that different than staring at a swimming pool. There's people in it, but it kind of looks the same. I mean, it really is and you can say that about track, I guess. I mean, the joke about track is it's boring because the fast guy always wins, but it's different to me. I mean, like I really enjoy watching track and field. I wish it was on television more.
Yeah, it's almost like the same thing with soccer, where soccer has the Euros. And it's kind of like the World Cup within because the World Cup's every 4 years. We need like that one other thing to kind of watch, and they've kind of figured out how to put things in the summers until we get our next World Cup. Track and field, I don't feel like has really figured that out. I know they have the World Championships.
You root against the United States much when you watch the Olympics?
No, I go full patriotic. It's the only time I ever remember rooting against the United States was in 2004 when we put together that horrible basketball team.
Oh yeah, that was the beginning of our friendship.
Yeah,
it was the first time we ever did anything in public.
Yeah, that's right. And I had bet on Argentina, and I was so mad at the team they put together. Yeah, I bet on Argentina.
You do a lot of Olympic gambling. I guess it's not I shouldn't be surprised by that. But
well, it's only the basketball. This year I might open it up to other sports. But yeah, I was so convinced that the team we put together was going to lose. I was just like, I'm betting on this. I'm going to make money. We're going to lose. But that's the only time I really remember.
I guess I'm rooting against the American soccer team.
But remember in, I'm going to say it was 1983. It was the year before the 84 Olympics.
Uh-huh.
I think the World Championships. It was either late 82 or 83, and Carl Lewis that was like his first breakout. I remember Sports Illustrated.
His breakout was in 83 at Helsinki in the World Track and Field World Championships.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And he just blew everybody away. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They used to NBC, I think, was showing those things on tape.
Yeah, I remember watching that. I remember that. Those championships felt like a big deal, and I don't know why they had to not be a big deal.
At that time, I was obsessed with Carl Lewis breaking Bob Beeman's long jump record. I thought about it all the time. I wanted it to happen so badly that I would, I feel like the sporting news at the time kind of covered track to some degree. They would, so I would read all the results,
That's so funny. I felt the same way.
Kelvin Smith was a good sprinter for the U.S. Kelvin Smith actually had, I think, the world record in the 100 at the time, but he was still no Carl Lewis.
I felt the same way about the long jump. I love the long jump. I loved watching Carl Lewis thinking that this was going to be the jump when he broke Bob Beeman's record. And
it was so crazy how it ended up being broken, and it was so weird, Well,
who do you think, if somebody had like a crazy elite possible world record breaking skill, and it doesn't sound like we have anyone in this Olympics, but do you think it would be a 100-yard sprinter or 100-meter sprinter or a long jump guy or a decathlete or a pole vaulter? Because I feel like it would be the long jump.
Well, that would be the most thrilling.
That would just kind of captivate America the most. I mean, maybe you could talk about.
I always feel like it's the 100 and the 400. That those are the two races where if somebody is awesome, because the 100 is just pure and simple the fastest person who exists on the planet, and the 400 is the purest race. It's the longest sprint. It's one lap of the track, which is 400 meters. It is interesting how the decathlon is no longer a meaningful thing. I mean, I was really little, but I probably had mostly to do with cereal. But I remember really being into Bruce Jenner. That seems weird now, and I like Daley Thompson a lot. I used to follow Daley Thompson's career.
What about Dan and Dave? That was the big decathlon loss when that thing fell apart.
that was the beginning of where you try to market something before the people succeed, and it ends up making both guys look terrible.
Yeah, and resented.
Yes.
I think, though, has anybody jumped 30 feet yet in the long jump? I don't think that's happened.
Yeah, I don't. Boy, Powell has the record now, right? That's still the record. I don't think anyone's jumped 30 feet. That has not happened. I mean, if we're wrong, we're going to get a million tweets about it. But I guess either we're talking about track like we know all this about it, and I guess we don't even know. But track's hard to keep track of because
it's really hard.
The numbers constantly go down. Like when I see numbers in the 100 now, that the guy who finishes fifth to me seems like he should be the fastest guy in the world because it's like a 996.
Right. I don't see. That's another thing. I don't even know a lot of the records. I don't know what the 100 record is. I don't know the exact number.
I think it's
don't know what the long jump number is.
976.
The high jump.
Because Ben Johnson ran 986, and that was taken off the board, and it was sort of like at the time people were like, "That's as fast as people can go, and you can't go faster because
your legs will disintegrate."
Yeah.
He had the yellow eyeballs going though. If somebody could jump 30 feet, and if it's happened yet, I apologize, but a 30-foot long jump I think would be incredible to see in person. It's like a staggering distance. It's 10 yards.
Well, it's a first down. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a first down. If somebody could jump a first down, I'd want to be there.
Weird about the long jump though is when you're watching it, like the guy jumping knows if he did awesome, but as a spectator, you don't really know until they tell you because it's a matter of inches. But sometimes the guy will land in the pit and he'll immediately just jump up and he's ecstatic. And it's like he knows he went 4 inches longer than his other jump. It's like, how does he know? It's like such a...
Well, it does seem like when you think of all the technology we have with, like Wimbledon, you get a serve and they know within 20 seconds whether the serve hit the line or not. I don't understand why we don't have technology where the long jump, there's some little chip that tells us, like, even right as it happened, how long the guy jumped. I don't know if they've worked enough technology into the Olympics. Maybe that's on the docket. I like the high jump too. The high jump to me is the thing that I'm always the most amazed by.
Yes.
I just don't understand it. It makes no sense.
Well, I mean, anytime you stand next to something that's above your head, just try to imagine jumping over it.
It just makes no sense at all.
When I was in high school, there was I went to a small school in North Dakota. So, all the successes were sort of, pretty kind of like, low-hanging fruit. But there was this high jumper from a neighboring town named, his name was like Brent Flaw or something. I know his last name was Flaw, F-L-A-A. And like this kid could high jump 6'8". He went on to have a college career and stuff. But, I mean, these track meets would just stop when he was high jumping.
Yeah.
Like, everybody would go and watch this guy. It was just so nuts because he was like a 6'3" guy or 6'2" guy jumping 6'8". It was just mind-boggling. Because to qualify for state, you had to jump 6'2",
Well, who was the first guy? Fosbury?
Fosbury invented the Fosbury flop, which was a new technique, basically. They used to do something called, I think it was called like the Texas Sidewinder or something, where you basically come in from the left, and you kind of, to a degree, scissor kick over the top, like you'd come in from the left side, try to kick your right leg over the bar, and he invented this style of going over backwards, and that sort of revolutionized the sport. Pole vault's an amazing thing, too, when you watch it live. Even if you're watching at the high school level, it's pretty crazy to see dudes go up like that. Although I think they wear helmets now, and that takes away a lot of it.
They do. Strangely, that's my son's favorite. We watched some of the Olympic trials, and he was just riveted by the pole vault. And
I mean, like, to me, it's impossible. Growing up, my dad was really into, like, bull riding and stuff like that, so we'd watch bull riding. But
yeah,
do you have bull riders wearing helmets? It just doesn't. I know it makes all this sense, and I don't want to ever advocate someone getting hurt, but it's not the same thing.
Well, just wait until about 15 years from now when all the soccer players are wearing helmets. That's going to get weird. They'll be wearing like these padded kazoo helmets. Because there's going to, the concussion thing, everybody's concentrating on football and hockey, and meanwhile, soccer, lacrosse, like there's other sports where it's just as big of an issue.
You see, they'll wear them in America. Will they wear them in Europe?
Probably
not.
No. And they'll call us wusses.
Soccer and baseball are really conservative sports and stuff like this. The people who love it do not want to see any kind of change. And remember, America's only 200 and some years old. You go over to some place like in Europe where everything that they view everything as sort of the potential for lasting forever because their culture has essentially lasted seemingly forever. They are not going to be open to changes like that. They are not.
Hey, your book came out in paperback. Quick plug. Want to plug it? Want to plug it? Quick.
Oh, well, hey, buy it. Sure, yeah.
Give us the title and
the title is
I can't
The
remember
Invisible Man. I'm in that. There's that movie, that LCD Sound System movie is out.
You what?
Come out. I'm in this movie.
What do you mean?
There's this movie called Shut Up and Play the Hits. It's about the last concert that the LCD Sound System did in Madison Square Garden. There's a film about it, and I'm in the movie. I'm the narrator. I'm just sort of the guy in the movie who talks to the singer.
Oh. When's that come out?
I don't know. I don't know if it comes out in the fall. I think it might actually be. They're showing it like in special theaters for one night. It might even be tonight, actually, for all I know. And then I think it's going to be released in a broader sense in like the fall. But the guy like Spike Jonze was sort of involved with it. It's two directors from England, but they really filmed this concert well. For the number of cameras they had, it's a pretty immersive experience when you see this last concert. I mean, I kind of have a suspicion that of all the things I've been involved with, this is probably going to be the thing that is remembered the most. And I'm just like a very tangential part of it, but it's like the concert footage from this film is pretty amazing.
Now I'm excited. Chuck Klosterman, we will talk to you soon. Thanks for the
time.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.